Who dat to the Who Dat Nation, and welcome to the Dome Patrol podcast, your podcast for the New Orleans Saints here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and it is cut time. It is the official announcement of the roster moves to get our roster down to the mandated 53-man roster. And in typical Saints fashion, this did not go off without a hitch. It didn't go off favorable in some areas, whereas there were some surprise cuts. There were some surprise players who are still currently on the team. And there were some moves that were questionable, should I say. Let's keep in mind that the Saints can still re-sign some of these players to their practice squad or to the roster beginning tomorrow, depending on who they put on the injury list or injured reserve, and that will free up a spot and they can bring somebody back in and so on and so forth. And there are still some moves to be made after this 53-man roster had been announced, but it was still kind of a shock to some of these moves. And we're going to go through all of the cuts that took place on Tuesday, August the 29th, which is a monumental day here in the city of New Orleans because it marks the anniversary of a lot of hurricanes. It marks the anniversary of Ida, Katrina, Isaac. This is normally the date we get a hurricane. I don't know what it is about August the 29th, but it's doomsday when it comes to New Orleans. But this year, it wasn't a hurricane that came through and wiped out everything. It was the roster cuts, and it was some very surprising cuts. Let's run through the list of all the moves made for this cut. The New Orleans Saints made the following roster moves today. This was announced by our GM and Executive Vice President, Mickey Loomis. Let's start off with the termination of contracts. These were players whose contracts were terminated. Linebacker Ryan Conley, terminated. J.P. Hoyt, tight end, contract terminated. Also tight end, Jesse James. Tackle, Storm Norton. Cornerback, Bradley Roby. Linebacker, Jalen Smith. Linebacker, Ty Summers. And running back, Darrell Williams. Those were the terminated contracts. I'm going to touch in on what I feel about all these individuals after I run through the list, because I have questions. Going to the waived players, there were 26 total players who were waived in these cuts. Safety, Jonathan Abrams. Linebacker, Nick Anderson. Wide receiver, Kawan Baker. Fullback, Jack Bargas. Wide receiver, Lynn Bolton Jr. Defensive lineman, Gerard Cage. Wide receiver, Shaq Davis. Defensive tackle, Prince Amir. Offensive lineman, Mark Evans II. Guard, Chuck Filiga. Defensive back, Adrian Fry. Punter, Blake Gilligan. Defensive tackle, Jack Hofflin. Defensive back, Anthony Johnson. Offensive lineman, Lewis Kidd. Wide receiver, Jonte Kirtland. Guard, Tommy Kramer. Tight end, Lucas Krull. Defensive end, Nico Lalos. Safety, Smoke Monday. Linebacker, Anthony Orjo. I'm pretty sure I butchered his name. Defensive end, Kyle Phillips. Offensive lineman, Alex Forsum. Defensive back, Troy Pride. And offensive lineman, Calvin Throckmorton. And also, the New Orleans Saints traded our kicker, well, our former kicker now, Will Lutz, to the Denver Broncos for a 7th-round pick, reuniting him with Sean Payton. And so those were the moves made to get our roster down to 53. So, as you can see, there are a lot of questions to be asked here. There, I'm a little discouraged. I'm gonna put it kindly like that. I'm a little discouraged by a couple of the moves. One being Bradley Roby. I like Bradley Roby. I think Bradley Roby was a asset in the secondary. You know, he was your nickel, and he held down the nickel. Now, I understand New Orleans Saints drafted Alontae Taylor last year. Paulson Adebo went down a few games last year, as well as Marshawn Lattimore. Taylor had to step up, and he did a marvelous job in his position. This offseason, this preseason training camp, it was a battle between Adebo and Taylor. Adebo won. I can contest to that. Yes, he won. So now that leaves, where does Taylor go? Is Taylor the best, well, the third best cornerback on this team? Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Well, you could probably move him to second. I wouldn't fight you on that. And so that leaves Bradley Roby kind of stuck out, because now you're going to move Alontae Taylor to your nickel. And Alontae Taylor has said it recently, he doesn't like the nickel. He does not like playing the slants. You know, he's not comfortable with it. He said he can do it, but that's not his strong suit, which it isn't. His strong suit is the primary receivers or the second receiver, and he's proven that, you know, for the most part. For the most part, he's had some misses in this preseason. I will openly admit that. But at the cost of losing Bradley Roby, I don't know. Now, a lot of speculation to that move was cutting costs. Bradley Roby, I don't agree with that, because it ain't like Bradley Roby was costing the Saints $10 million. I think they saved, like $2 million by cutting him or something like that. It's not like it was astronomical numbers here where you needed to make that move. So I don't 100% agree with that. Once again, he was released. So there's a chance we can re-sign him. There's a chance. Plus, you want to have that depth there, because that leaves the Saints kind of lacking. All these moves leave the Saints lacking in some areas, but I'm going to get to that point a little later. The other big one, the other head scratcher here, was Jalen Smith, linebacker. Now, you just signed him. So I'm kind of like, why? Why did you cut him? And he looked good in preseason. He looked good. And for him to back up Demario Davis, I thought was a match made in heaven. That's perfect. You can utilize them. You can, preserve them both, because they both have, well, more Smith as far as injuries are concerned. But going into this season, Davis was a little banged up. He didn't play in any preseason games. Started training camp, he was hurt. You know, he's healthy now and is a full go God spare for week 1. But I would love to have had that 1-2 punch there, you know, and I don't understand that move. Now, once again, he was released, so there's a chance you can bring him back, re-sign him. And when I say that, let me kind of expound on that a little bit. There's a difference between being released and being waived. When you're waived, you are open to 31 other teams. That means you have to go through waivers. And if any team claims you, that's that. You know, they're no longer on the market. But if you're released, that automatically makes you a free agent, to whereas you can go wherever you want to go. whatever team wants you. You can go wherever you want to go, but you get where I'm coming from. So theoretically, they can stick around. They being Bradley Roby or Jalen Smith, if the Saints had a conversation with him, like, look, we're gonna cut you on cut day, but don't go nowhere else. Just be cool. Don't go nowhere else. We gonna re-sign you once we really, start going through this roster with a fine tooth comb. Start putting players on IR and this here, freeing up roster spots that way, and you can come back to the team. Maybe we work contracts or whatever, get you a better deal or whatever the case may be. And so it's a possibility there. Also, I was kind of shocked with the Darrell Williams thing. I was shocked and not shocked because he really didn't get much playing time in the preseason. I think for one game I saw him, and that was against the Chargers, I believe. But he really didn't make an impact per se. And it is a full room, and I think the emergence. Well, here's the thing. This is why it's not a shock. They signed Darrell Revis. I wish we had Darrell Revis in his prime. Darrell Williams after Kendrick Miller got hurt in that first preseason game, and early on it was kind of concerns surrounding when will he return. And so as an insurance policy, that's how Darrell Williams became a New Orleans Saints. So once Kendrick Miller came back, almost immediately he bounced back quick. I was shocked how quick he came back and produced. So at that point, that made Darrell Williams a little expendable at that point. So I was shocked, but not shocked ultimately. Going through the waiver wire with the players that we waived that are eligible to be claimed off of waivers from other teams, there are a couple of players on this list that I don't see making it through the waiver wire, and I'm kind of upset by that. One being linebacker, another linebacker. Well, two linebackers, but the first one is Nick Anderson, and Nick Anderson, Tulane Green Wave. He's a rookie. He was awesome at Tulane. I mean, that was a steal for the Saints to get him. I think he was undrafted, I believe. Yeah, but he didn't get much playing time either. At least not much that I noticed. Definitely didn't make an impact that way. So I kind of understand the frame of mind there, but I also feel he's a project. I think you keep him there. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully he clears waivers where you can re-sign him to the practice squad, and that list won't be released until tomorrow. But I hope he makes it through to whereas we can re-sign him and keep him on the team. The other linebacker, no, not linebacker, I'm sorry, defensive end, and that was Nico Lalos. Nico Lalos made plays throughout the entire preseason. I don't know what happened in practice. I weren't at practice. I can't tell you. But I can tell you what happened in the games that he played. He was a madman. I really was hoping that we could find a spot for him, and ultimately he got waived. Ellis Merriweather, the running back, also waived. He's another one. I liked him. He set the world on fire? No, but he was a quality player. But as I said before, that running back room kind of stacked. It was going to be some casualties there. I get it, and unfortunately, he's the one to be shown the door. If you follow the NFL throughout this offseason, you know that running backs are like the most disrespected position in football anyway. So, it's sad because at one point that was the premier position in football. Now it's like whatever, but anywho's, another kind of a shock is Lucas Kroll, the tight end. who had a phenomenal game last week against the Texans. Was the leading receiver, had 7 receptions, had 106 yards, I believe. He had a phenomenal game. Once again, another stacked room. You have Juwan Johnson, you have Taysom Hill, you have Foster Moreau, you have Jimmy Graham. It was another one. No, there isn't another one. I think, because they cut Jesse James as well. So you have, it is pretty stacked there. And I know that they're tweaking this offense. And from what I understand, from what I read, the Saints are going to be using a lot of 2 tight end sets going forward. So you kind of need a few tight ends on your roster to make this work. And look, if I had to choose, and I said this on the post game recap of the Texans game, if I had to choose between the two, I was going with Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham just had that. He just had the edge. Jimmy Graham is a nice big target. And is he your prototypical tight end as far as blocking and all that? No, that's not his strong. Never has been his strong suit. But running routes, catching, out muscling, red zone threat. Yes. So that's I got to give the edge to Jimmy Graham. And unfortunately, Lucas Kroll will not be a New Orleans Saints, at least right now. Who knows in the future? The kicking competition that came out of nowhere that I didn't even realize that we had. Actually, it was 2 kicking competitions that I didn't know, because I was kind of shocked with Blake Gillikin being cut. Blake Gillikin, I felt, was an excellent punter. I think he got here, 3 years ago? He was the reason that we showed Thomas Morstead the door. And Thomas Morstead is like a staple as far as Saints punters. The emergence of Blake Gillikin made it easy to part ways with Thomas Morstead. And I didn't see any flaws in Blake Gillikin's game. I think he had one bad punt, now that I think about it, in the Chiefs game, I believe. I could be wrong, but I do remember it was just a bad punt. And I said to myself then, I was like, boy, it's a good thing he ain't he ain't being pushed in camp. But I didn't know anything about the other cat. I did see him, but I thought he was just somebody to be out there, a camp body, so to speak. But that was kind of a shock, that they released Blake Gillikin and kept, what's his name, Lou Hartley or Headley? I got to get his name down now because he's our punter. So there's that. And, of course, our place kicker position, where we saw the battle between Will Lutz and Blake Gelpy. I think that's how you say his last name, Gelpy. Once again, got to get to know his name because he's our place kicker. Will Lutz being traded to the Broncos. And this, I read this about a week or so ago, so this didn't come as a shock. And I didn't realize it was a battle. I didn't understand that. I just thought it was another body in camp. And then when we saw him in the game, when he kicked the game-winning field goal against the Chiefs, he looked like he can handle big pressure moments throughout. He missed that one field goal last week, that 60-yarder. But the leg on this guy is, about 115 pounds soaking wet? If that, I mean, the dude is like teeny tiny, but he has a powerful leg, and I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad. Will Lutz had let's just say he struggled last year. He struggled. He was hurt the year before that. It was a lot of things, and I can honestly say Will Lutz cost us maybe 2 games last season. So I ain't gonna say he cost us, but he was one of the factors. It was a lot of factors going into all 10 of those losses. I can't put it on one particular person, other than Andy Dalton in that Arizona game. But other than that, You know, everybody played their part. But yeah, man, that is a real crazy cut list. And so let's go through the depth chart as it stands right now. This is the updated chart to a degree. There's still names on here that I gotta filter out as I go through because I don't have a up to date version. But this is the chart right now. At quarterback, Derek Carr, Jameis Winston, Jake Hader, and our fourth string quarterback is Taysom Hill. At wide receiver, you have Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams, Kendrick Miller. At wide receiver, Chris Olave, Traquan Smith, Michael Thomas, Keith Kirkwood, Rashid Shaheed, J.T. Perry. At tight end, Jawan Johnson, Taysom Hill, Foster Monroe, Jimmy Graham. At fullback, Adam Pacens. At right tackle, or left tackle, should I say, Trevor Penning, London Young. At left guard, Andrus Pete, James Hurst, Nick Saveri, and Tommy Kramer. I think Tommy Kramer got cut. Yeah. At center, Eric McCoy, Max Garcia. Right guard, you have Cesar Ruiz, and that's it. And left and right tackle, you have Ryan Ramczyk, and that's it. Okay, moving over to defense. At left defensive end, Cameron Jordan, Peyton Turner. At left defensive tackle, Nathan Shepard, Brian Breezy, and Gerard Cage. At right defensive tackle, you have Kalen Sanders, Malcolm Roach, and Jack Hofflin. At right defensive end, Carl Granderson, Isaac Forsky, and Tano Passano. Weak side linebacker, you have Pete Warner. Middle linebacker, you have Demario Davis and D'Amico Jackson. At strong side linebacker, Zach Braun. Left cornerback, Paulson Adebo, Lenny Johnson Jr. At strong safety, you have Tyrann Mathieu, JT Gray, and Ogo Amadi. I believe I'm saying his name right. Pretty sure I'm butchering it. At free safety, you have Marcus May. That's all. And at right cornerback, you have Marshawn Lattimore, Alante Taylor, and Isaac Yodom. Place kicker, Blake Gallup, and punter, Lou Headley. And so that is the 53-man roster of the New Orleans Saints as it stands right now, today, Tuesday, August the 29th. And so this can all change tomorrow. There could be some moving and shaking going on, but that's how it stands. And my problem going forward is the depth, especially on that offensive line. As much as that offensive line struggled throughout the preseason, we don't have any depth. We don't have nothing behind Cesar Ruiz at right guard. You have nothing behind Ryan Ramczyk at right tackle. I mean, this is a concern of mine. You know, this is a big concern. Especially going by the history, Saints have been banged up on that offensive line for years. We always catch an injury. Andrus Pete, you can set your watch to it. He's going to miss 2 or 3 games this season. I mean, I pray that I'm wrong, but history dictates that. You know, he was hurt in the preseason. Now, so, I mean, I'm not confident in him lasting 17 weeks and hopefully more. You need somebody to come behind him. Now, James Hurst, I believe James Hurst outperformed. James Hurst should be the starter. Now, I know what they're going to try to do. They're going to intertwine Landon Young, have him play on this side, you know, Nick Saveri play on that side and all this here. They always putting offensive linemen out of position. I think the only one who hasn't moved was Ryan Ramczyk. I think he's the only one who's been the right tackle for his entire duration as a New Orleans Saints. Everybody else has moved around. At some point or another. Cesar Ruiz was at center. He moved. Uh, uh, Eric McCoy is now at center, but at one time he played a little guard and all. I mean, my God, man, stick with the position. Just because they can do it, don't mean that they should do it. But I digress. I'm going to go into this optimistic and believe that and trust that they know what they're doing. Let's just address the elephant in the room here, because I know a lot of Saints fans out there in the Who Dat Nation are asking the same question that I'm about to ask. Why? Why is Tre'Quan Smith still on this team? I cannot. I don't know. Tre'Quan Smith must know where the bodies are buried. That's the only thing I can think of. And look, from all indications, through his teammates and coaches, everybody says this dude is a stand-up guy. He is an awesome dude to be on a team with, and I champion that, love that. Pretty sure he's an awesome guy. But between those numbers, man, Tre'Quan Smith has not been it. He has had opportunities to shine. Michael Thomas has been out for 2.5 years. That was his opportunity. He did nothing with it. You know, he had other chances to break out. He did nothing with it. I'm tired of hearing about him being one of the best blocking wide receivers in the NFL. I don't want you to block. I'm not paying you to block. I need you to run routes and catch the ball. And that's something that just hasn't happened since he's been here. And I don't understand why he is still on this team. I'm not advocating for nobody to lose their job. Nobody. He can go somewhere else. You know, but he's not working out here. That's all I'm saying. It's not working. He is taking a spot away from a lot of talented players, I feel, that got cut today. Shaq Davis. You mean to tell me that Tre'Quan Smith is better than Shaq Davis? Shaq Davis has shown me more in these 3 preseason games than Tre'Quan Smith has shown me in the 8 years he's been. I don't know how long he's been here, but it was too long. But it's like, man, why are we still playing around with this dude? I don't understand it. You know, that's a roster spot for something we need. We have positions that need depth, and we had to cut a player in order to keep him, because that's in the back of my mind. That's all I can think of. We had to cut a player in efforts to keep Tre'Quan Smith, who hasn't played a game this preseason. Actually, I think he's been hurt all preseason, if I'm not mistaken. And so I don't understand it. Make me understand it. It just doesn't make sense to me. But hey, look, love the fella. He's the luckiest man on God's green earth, obviously, because he still has a job. He's still on this roster, for better or worse, at least currently. But that's the roster. That is the cuts that were made. I know there were a couple of unpopular cuts, and I fully understand that, and I'm with it. I'm scratching my head with it as well. You're not alone there, but like I said to start this season, and I'm a stick with it. I don't want to come out as hypocritical. I'm gonna trust them. I'm gonna trust them that they know what they're doing until they show me they can't be trusted, and that's not gonna take long. The first 2 or 3 games, I'm gonna know. We all gonna know. So fingers crossed, toes crossed. Send up a prayer. Let's see if this all works. And like I said, a lot of those cuts that we are upset about, there's a possibility that those players may return. I'm had my fingers crossed on a few of them. Shaq Davis really, really, really impressed me, and I really, really, really hope he gets through waivers in order to come back, sign him to the practice squad or something. You know, that's the main one that I'm like, Tre'Quan Smith, you can go. If it had to come between the two, it's nothing personal. You know, it's who better produces on the field. but whatever. Anywho's, I would like to know, how are you feeling about this 53-man roster? Is this a championship team that Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis have constructed to make a run for another Super Bowl? I would like to know how you feel. Which player are you upset that is left? Which player do you feel should have left and didn't? Let me know by emailing the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also look me up on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. You can also search for that on YouTube. Look for the KB Radio Network channel. Subscribe and like this video. Also, don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently checking out the Dome Patrol podcast here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this rundown of roster cuts. I can't wait to speak to you again as we prepare to enter this regular season. Oh boy, this is going to be exciting. To everybody in the Who Dat Nation, let's give it to them. Who Dat?